been designated unofficially the lead or the most important of the pacemakers. He's doing a lot of gesturing. Well, this was, 25 minutes ago, the start of the 49th Berlin Marathon. Just to remind you, if you're just joining us, almost 48,000 runners from over 150 nations, a real international field, and, well, no words required for a shot like that.
Well, Kipchoge moving 9:14 today. He's gone through in 14:11. He went through 10K in 28:23. They've gone through 9K here with a 2:52 clocking, so we'll have another comparison point at 10K in a couple of minutes' time. But he did go too quickly through the first half last year, 59:51, and I guess what would be ideal today, Chris, though they are on sub-2-hour schedule, so again they're heading for a sub-1-hour clocking at halfway. Be something around 60:10 maybe, just giving yourself that tiny margin of reserve so that you can come back a little bit quicker.
Talking to his agent, Jos Hermans, yesterday briefly in the hotel, and just trying to get some sort of sense of where he was. And, you know, in the media, I think we sometimes think that everything's done scientifically, but I think it's important to stress, Tim, that, as you know, there are so many different ingredients, aren't there, that go into something that results in a world record. The weather is huge. How is the athlete feeling on the day? You know, do you get out of bed and think through halfway? Last year he felt great. It was just one of those days, and he just pushed it on. And maybe another day today. So far, he looks as though he's in the mood. Yeah,
and of course you can't criticise him last year, even though he went off the range, so to speak, off the plan, as we see them there heading through Kreuzberg and Mitte towards the 10K point. The leading men and the chasing group there. About 100 metres apart? Couple of hundred metres apart,
yeah. 200 metres between the leading men and the chasing group, and the athlete in picture just below Kipchoge is Amos Kipruto. So, yeah, almost 200 metres that gap between Kipchoge and Kindi and Kipruto.
Oh, Kipchoge there. Those white shoes, second to left, bouncing along nicely. 38 years old. Some people believe, as was the case with Haile Gebrselassie, actually, through his wonderful career, that he's actually several years north of that, e.g. over 40, ELIUD Kipchoge. And frankly, there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about avoiding injuries. Any athlete's career, particularly the long distances, if you can accumulate those years of training and good strength, they go through 28K in 28:27 there.
Just outside last year's 10K split.
Well, that's good, Chris. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
A little bit more conservative.
Yeah, I mean, it's only by 0.04 of a second, but it suggests maybe they're just reining it in. Kindi, a new name, is the other athlete in the white, just to Kipchoge's right there. And then the chasing group, we said about 200 metres, equates to 30 seconds. That is a huge lead already at this stage of the race.
Well, Kindi is a bit of a mystery man. He has just run a couple of marathons. I'm just looking, in fact, a couple of half marathons. His best marathon, according to our stats, is a 2:08. That was in Barcelona last year. But there's different spellings of his name. If you try and look him up, you'll struggle. He's run a 59 half marathon as well. That too was in Barcelona last year. He's run a 62-minute half marathon in Hawassa, up in Ethiopia at high altitude.
Significant, and it'd be interesting to see the next 15K split and then on to 20 and see if that little buffer that we've been talking about, the little cushion, just to put into context, 18 of ELIUD Kipchoge's marathons have all been with negative splits if you include his sub-2-hour marathon attempts in Monza and in Vienna, which are not officially recognised. But safe to say the vast majority of ELIUD Kipchoge's marathons have been negative splits. And just for anybody watching who doesn't know what that means, it means the second half of the race is run more quickly than the first half. And that's why last year here was so interesting, because it was a positive split, which is very unusual. Amenas Petros, the German #1, fourth from left of picture, the tall figure in the white vest there, is looking good. I'll try and bring you a 10-kilometre split time for him.
Well, 28:27 is only 2 seconds outside 2-hour pace at 10K, so he's pretty much spot on. And last year, when he went through 10K in 28:23, so 4 seconds slower at 10K. Now, these might seem like tiny margins, 4 seconds over nearly half an hour, but actually, you're dealing with Formula One cars here that are where every tiny 10,000th of a fraction is weighed up, measured very, very carefully. You're at the element or stage of endurance performance, and he has to get it right here. Kipchoge there.
Yeah, talking of redlining, we just got a glimpse there of the blue line, which is painted on the road surface. That's the shortest line, the official line, and they'll try and keep as close to that blue line as they can. So the three pacemakers with Kipkemboy in the cap, the man in charge, doing lots of directing. He's doing a fine job here. This is the chasing group, about 30 seconds behind, around 200 meters. And then Amenas Petros there, further back, with one or two other athletes for company. And just to remind you, his goal today, trying to get through in around 2:04. That would be comfortably inside the Olympic qualifying time.
There, the lead woman, Asefa, tucked in, and plenty of the other top females. When the world record, or rather, she set a course record here last year. She went through 10K in 32:25. So she is 40 seconds quicker at 10K than last year is Asefa. She got to halfway last year in 68:12. She's on schedule to go through halfway in, well, about a minute and a half quicker than that at the moment. She is really shifting along with this big women's pack. And Chris, interesting, isn't it, that so many of these women are with her, and she's running at about 2:14 tempo, actually pretty much world record tempo.
Yes, and just to remind you of that world record, 2:14.04, Bridget Kosgei set in Chicago in 2019. And then, as Tim mentioned earlier on, we've had Amani Beriso, 2:14.58. So the third fastest time in history set by Asefa here 12 months ago is now only the fifth fastest time. It's still brilliant, but she's on for something better than that so far. And looking comfortable, looking really comfortable.
Well, I'm just looking at Bridget Kosgei. She went through 10K in 31:28 when she set her world record. She blasted through the first half in Chicago 2019, 31:28. They've gone through here in 31:45, a more measured first 10K. Indeed, Bridget Kosgei went through halfway in 66:59 in Chicago 4 years ago. I don't think we're going to see a sub-67 first half here unless they go berserk in this second 10K segment. But it's probably more measured and more sensible running, I think. So we shall see. Of course, Kosgei, when she broke the world record, smashed the world record by 81 seconds back in 2019, Chris. Ran positive splits. She ran, you know, a very quick first half and then a slightly slower second half. Negative splits is more common nowadays.
Yeah, as we were mentioning with Kipchoge a few minutes ago. So the leading men approaching 13 kilometres. They're on the most easterly part of the course so far, out in Friedrichshain. And they'll start to move southward towards Neukölln, for those of you who know Berlin well, and then into Kreuzberg and Schöneberg, taking in all the main districts of the German capital. All the while, the surprise for us so far, Dursa Kindi is still there on the shoulder of Kipchoge. Looking comfortable. Doesn't look stressed at all, does he, for a 2:08 man?
And I suspect ELIUD Kipchoge, to an extent, is wondering who the heck he is, but actually computing in a relaxed manner what the splits mean that he's seeing as he goes through 5K and 10K. He knows things are going okay. And actually, maybe less than I'm saying he's thinking about it, because he has to trust those pacemakers, and he will be getting some information from the sidelines shouted at him too.
Yeah, we think of Guy Adola a few years ago when he was up on the shoulder and actually went past Kipchoge at 40 kilometers, and the look almost of disdain from Kipchoge on that day. Who are you and what are you doing here this late in the race? And then he just burnt off, almost impudent. We've got a long way to go. I think if Kindi is still with Kipchoge at 40 kilometers, then we have a story. Over the Spree again for the second time, approaching 13 kilometers. And they are knocking out metronomic 250, 251, that sort of kilometer time and time again.
Well, he's a couple of hundred meters ahead of the chasing group now. There's Kipchoge. Just looking up Kindi, as he's gotten his number, by the way. There's another version of his name, Kassi Dursa, 24 years old. He's run a couple of marathons. He actually debuted in Hamburg back in 2021. He was 5th in 2:17, and then he won San Sebastian that same year in 2:12. And then last year, 10th in Barcelona with that personal best of 2:08, and then 2nd in Cape Town in 2:11. And then he dropped out of Doha Marathon earlier on this year. So there's a little bit of experience in those legs. He's had 5 marathon starts and he's gradually improved. Those 4 marathons he's finished, 2:17, 2:12, 2:08, 2:11. So what he's doing here, moving at sub 2-hour tempo, goodness only knows.
The chasing group getting further away. Now 300 meters behind this leading group. Kipchoge. There you can see the blue line that we've been referencing on the tarmac. So they're over the Spree once again. They're heading into Neukölln, to Cottbusser. Approaching 40 minutes of running, and so far so good, Tim. He's looking good, isn't he? I mean, facially gives nothing away. That tunnel vision you referred to is absolutely there, complete focus.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, you know, you can break down Kipchoge's running style, and everybody's running style is different, and it works for them, so to speak. But some coaches will say, well, he bounces too much. There's too much time in the air. He's not a floater, as you would say. He's a powerful runner, is ELIUD Kipchoge, but he has that musculature, wonderfully muscled legs, beautifully proportioned legs. Still looks like a track runner, doesn't it? You know, you look at those, the muscular shape for Kipchoge, second to left, and you sort of feel, yeah, there's a guy who can run a really quick 1,500 meters, and he probably could. Yeah. Frankly, I suspect he could, if he turned his attentions to it, he could go back to the track and run that, turn out some pretty good performances.
Just a word on the shoes. We're getting a good shot of them there. He was asked about shoes in the press conference briefly, and specifically about carbon plate shoes, and he said he normally uses those for his speed work and tempo runs and the long runs, and will have a different pair for race day. Slightly slower last kilometre, 2:54, and we stress that's no bad thing. We're quietly trying to just hope that he comes in halfway in something more sensible than last year. Just to remind you, that was 59:51. So 40 minutes of running, and they're already on their way to the 15th kilometre. Last year, the 15-kilometre split was 42-32. So that's our next major milestone.
Well, let me tell you that the women through 12K after a 3:07, and they're approaching 13K, are on 2:13.40 pace. They're on schedule, world record schedule at the moment in that women's race. And the bizarre thing, and we'll see them again in a minute, I'm sure, is just how big that women's pack is. There's half a dozen or so women at least in that lead pack, with many national standard German runners around them, moving at under 2:14 pace. That's a world record, remember, by Bridget Kosgei back on the 9th of October 2019. It was 2:14.04. That is the target for that women's pack. I think we can say that now. The halves for Kosgei was 66.59 and 67.05. So she was almost perfect split, actually. It was a very marginally positive split. It's a slightly slower second half. She got it so right on the day.
So the men on their way to the 15th kilometre, which will be an interesting split to bring you. We mentioned the lure and the attraction of the Olympic Games for Kipchoge next year in Paris. Just to remind you, no athlete has ever won 3 Olympic marathons. Bibi Bikili won in Rome 1960-64. Waldemar Czapinski, the East European.
How did Kindy almost run into the back of Kipchoge? Yeah, the Kipchoge cut across him, I guess, and you could see the official there in that corner about 100 metres back shouting at them, go right a bit, go right a bit, the drinks.
You'd have thought they've got plenty of space here, but they are running quite close to each other, even with all the space they've got. But that's the singleness of purpose, isn't it, of ELIUD Kipchoge. The Paris Olympics, he said, there's something boiling in my stomach, is what he described it as. That desire to get into the history books and become the first marathon runner to win 3 Olympic titles. Extraordinary achievement that would be. And this, I think, Tim, will give us some sort of indication post-Boston as to kind of what shape he's in at the moment.
There we are, 42.45, Chris, at 15K. And in his world record, he was 42.33. But we know he was too quick through last year, through the first half of the race. So that is probably just about perfect. 42.45 for Kipchoge and Kindy.
Yeah, it feels as though he's slipping back on last year, but we should just, again, reiterate that last year in the first half of the race probably cost him valuable seconds. He still knocked 30 seconds, of course, off the world record last year, but at one point he was heading for a much bigger margin than that. So about 12 seconds outside the tempo from last year.
Yeah, 42.33 last year, and he's gone from 42.45, so he's, well, about 8 seconds, 10 seconds slower than last year. It is a nice adjustment. It's the sort of little tweak that was needed to the over-ambitious running over the first hour 12 months ago. Kindy, well, I wonder how long he'll last, Chris. Is it just a matter of time, or is he going to shock us and stay there through halfway and 30K and so on? He's checking his watch there. Looking good. He's a big lad, a little bit taller than Kipchoge.
Kipchoge is surprisingly short. He's only 5'6", 5'7". His fighting weight is around 52 kilos. I mean, that's thicker. We should also mention the bands as well, who are strategically placed at different parts of the course.
There's that big women's pack that we've talked about. It's actually quite hard to pick out how many women are in that women's pack. Wagner Dessa is to the right there, just in the white vest, sort of tucked in behind. So Asefa very much to the fore there, left of picture. Won 7 out of races last year. She felt terrible in the Riyadh Marathon in her debut. Said she felt ill, but wanted the experience. That's why she carried on. That was back in March last year, where she was 7th in 2:34, and then, of course, just blew our minds last year with that 18-minute improvement from 2:34 to 2:15. 37 to win in Berlin in a massive course record. She's in her 13th marathon, plenty of experience, and she's actually running her 3rd marathon of this year. She was 4th in Tokyo in 2:20 back in early March, and then she won Prague back in May, the Prague Marathon in the glorious Czech capital in 2:20. Funnily enough, she's one of those absolutely focused on the marathon distance, Odessa. She doesn't run half marathons generally. Her personal best in a half marathon is only 72 minutes. Well, clearly with a personal best of 2:18, she's run quicker than that in several marathons, but that was back in 20. The once, though,
it's a very different scene, isn't it, at the start of at the head of the women's race than at the men's. But
jostling for positions is okay, I think.
Sorry to cut in. We've seen it done wrongly so many times, haven't we? So many big athletes. You think like someone like Mo Farah, who made the transition from track to road and took a long time to get the technique right. They're looking for not one but two records on the table here. There's confirmation of the women, so 13 seconds in record pace, and we already know that ELIUD Kipchoge is also inside world record pace, his own world record set here 12 months ago, 2:01.09.
So, and the 15th kilometre, 2:54. So a few little shifts up and down in tempo.
So the handbikers who set off a little bit earlier than the wheelchair racers and the...
Appearing now back to Edessa. The fourth placer last year maybe has just had one slug too many in this second of 5 rounds, so to speak, if it were a boxing match, because that 16th kilometre, excuse me, by far the quickest so far. They've been averaging, well, pretty much about 3:10 per kilometre, and then the 16th kilometre at 2:59. So incredibly quick for the women's just after 15k. And Asefa maybe wanted this. Maybe she wanted there's been a little bit of a slowing this last 3k. We'll watch that. They're coming up to 20k. You can see bottom left of the screen, and then the halfway split will be hugely significant. He has run under 60 minutes. But there is still an element of mystery around this fellow, whose best is outside 2:08, and he's operating at a tempo about 8 minutes quicker than that.
Incredible. Incredible he's still there. So in 2018, Kipchoge went through halfway in 61.06, and last year 59.51. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're now looking at what, about 400 meters almost exactly between the leading men, Kipchoge, which includes, and we haven't spoken to him about him for a little while now, Amos Kipruto, there he is, who's a 2:03.13 performer, but now 400 meters behind, approaching halfway.
And that's a big chunk of time, isn't it? What, about 70 seconds, something like that? I mean, well over a minute. Of course, things can change dramatically if there's any further slowing from Kipchoge. That information reaches the chasing pack, they may up their tempo. There's 20k.
Yeah, 2:57 that last, so that is the slowest of the race so far. 57.12 through 20 kilometers, and that compares to 56.44 last year. So we're looking at
halfway split will be mighty significant. But ELIUD Kipchoge still looking fine, Chris. And I think it's probably a good thing that he's got Kindi there with him.
Yeah, it's no bad thing at all. And just to put that into context, if he were to maintain this tempo through the second half of the race and improve it, we could be looking to him at the first sub-2 2:01 marathon in history. I think going sub-2 hours would be hugely optimistic today. It's not impossible, but so far we're looking at something